The paths. Every day it's the same thing. Wake up, work with the other drones, home, bed, so the whole cycle can start over again the next day. It's been like this every day for the past 28 years. And the only difference is that I get a little older the next day. My wife tries to relate her work schedule to mine, but she does not work in a cubicle to a completely bourgeois boss. Nonetheless, I still love her, because she keeps me going every day to bring home the bacon, even though we barely have time for each other anymore. Aside from her, nothing else can help me out of this rut that I'm digging for myself every day. But one day, something odd happened. I woke up a lot earlier than usual. I looked out the window at the picturesque storm that covered the city, and on the tree closest to my house, I saw one leaf on it. After I got dressed and went outside, the leaf fell off the tree. I caught it and put it in my suit pocket to protect it from the icy ground. As I was putting it in my pocket, I met a homeless man on the corner. I gave him some change, and then he said, "I can see the scars of routine life on you. You need someplace quiet. Follow me." A few minutes later, he took me to a cemetery. I was perplexed that he brought me here, but something about it seemed very peaceful, very serene, almost as if the hustle and bustle of life were non-existent here. After a few moments of taking in the fulfilling scenery of the cemetery, I got in my car and drove off to work. While on the way to work, I saw a cat on the side of the road, and for some reason, I just couldn't take my eyes off of it. I parked the car and then walked over to the cat. I gave him my tuna sandwich that I was going to have for lunch since the poor little guy would famish. After he was done eating, I scratched his back and he let out a grateful purr. He then rubbed up against my legs as a sign of affection and then scampered away. I got back in my car a few minutes later, but that cat's purr really made my day. When I got to my office, the boss wasn't waiting at the doors to give me a criticism of being late, or unprofessionally tardy, as he calls it. No one was there in the office, not even my fellow coworkers, who were usually lined up in their cubicle prisons. At first, I tried to get some work in, but after all that I experienced this morning, I just couldn't get in that state of mind. Instead, I walked up to the rooftop of the building and looked out at the crimson morning, sitting out there with my cup of coffee, the icy winds blowing in my face, and the calmness before the working hours gave me a sense of euphoria. Since my wife had the day off, I decided to give her a call and join me in this wondrous scenery. 10 minutes later, she showed up and joined me on the roof. She was astounded to see the same scene I did. We stood there for the longest of whiles, gazing across the city and contemplating on whether this was all a dream. We then decided to go back home, and since nobody was in the office for the rest of the day, I took the day off to spend with my wife. We watched a couple of movies, spent some time talking to each other, and even had a friendly game of chess, just like when we were dating. I had an absolutely wonderful time with her, and regretted not doing this more often than I did. When night fell, we both went to sleep happier than we had ever been in a long time. When I woke up, my wife was nowhere to be seen, which was odd since she never goes anywhere without telling me. 2 hours later, I still didn't hear from her, which really made me nervous. I decided to check in my office to see if she was watching from the rooftop. But when I stepped outside, nobody else was there. No cars, no people, nobody. I got in my car, assuming that nobody else was in the office, and sure enough, no one was there. I was confused by this behavior. It seemed that I was the only person left in the city. But right as I went outside, the cat that I fed yesterday was there waiting at the doorway for me. I felt a smile cross the ends of my lips. I picked him up and walked over to the cemetery. There, we experienced complete bliss and peacefulness, but I was still worried what happened to everyone, especially my wife. But if something did happen to her, I'm at least thankful that we made our last day together worth it. A few minutes later, I noticed that the cat was asleep, but when he awoke, he looked at me, let out a happy meow, and nestled his soft face deeper in my lap.